I never thought a friendly handyman would turn my quiet street into a con artist's playground. When Alex moved into my upstairs unit, he seemed like the perfect tenant. He arrived with a smile, a toolbox, and references that checked out. He said he was a freelance carpenter waiting for a bigger job. I liked his eagerness to fix the leaky faucet and repaint the porch, so I signed a 6-month lease. He paid rent on time, kept the place tidy, and even offered to help my elderly neighbor Mrs. Lowe, who lived alone next door. She was a widow in her late 70s, still sharp but a little frail after her husband's passing. Alex started stopping by with groceries, fixing her wobbly porch step, and listening to her stories about the old neighborhood. I thought he was just being a good tenant. A few weeks in, I noticed Mrs. Lowe's mail piling up at her door. When I asked if she'd seen any letters from her bank, she shrugged and said Alex had been taking care of it for her. That struck me as odd. She'd always been proud of handling her own affairs. I decided to drop by unannounced one Saturday morning. I found Alex in her kitchen, spreading out a stack of papers on the table while she watched, nodding slowly. He looked up, smiled, and said, "Just helping her sort out some paperwork." The papers looked like legal documents, letterhead from a firm I didn't recognize with signature lines and dates. My stomach tightened. I waited until Alex left, then asked Mrs. Lowe if she could show me what he'd been giving her to sign. She hesitated, then handed me a folder. Inside were copies of a trust transfer form that would have signed over the deed to her house to Alex, a power of attorney draft naming him as her agent, and a list of her bank accounts with balances highlighted. She whispered, "He says it's what my husband would have wanted, that I'm being selfish if I don't let him help." I felt a chill. It was clear he'd been grooming her while she was still grieving, using kindness as a wedge. I went home and searched Alex's name online. Nothing came up besides a few generic listings for handyman work. I decided to check his phone the next time he left it unattended. When he stepped out to grab a package from his car, I slipped into the living room and picked up his phone from the couch. The screen lit up with a flood of text messages, dozens of them, addressed to women with names like Linda from Springfield and Carolyn Riverton. Each message began with a sympathetic line about losing a spouse, then quickly moved to offers of help with estate matters, and attachments of contracts similar to the ones I'd seen on Mrs. Lowe's table. Photos of signed deeds, bank statements, and even selfies with the women in their homes filled his gallery. There was also a spreadsheet labeled targets, with columns for contact date, vulnerability notes, and amount of assets. I called Mrs. Lowe, told her to lock her door and not sign anything else, and then I called the police. I gave them the phone, the printed spreadsheets, and the forged documents I'd collected. The officers arrived within 20 minutes. Alex returned just as they were pulling up, saw the lights, and tried to bolt. The officers stopped him, asked for identification, and when he fumbled, they searched his car. Inside, they found a lockbox with more fake law firm letterhead, a laptop with additional spreadsheets tracking over 30 women across 3 states, and a stash of intercepted condolence cards with checks that he'd been hoarding. Mrs. Lowe arrived with her daughter, tears streaming as she realized how close she'd come to losing her home. The police read Alex his rights, and he was taken away in handcuffs, still protesting that he was just trying to help. The detectives later told me he'd been running a classic inheritance scam operation, posing as a sympathetic helper, isolating widows, pressuring them into signing over assets while they were emotionally vulnerable, then disappearing with the proceeds. When the cruiser drove off, I stood on my porch with Mrs. Lowe, who squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for seeing what I couldn't." I learned that day that kindness can be a mask, and that the best protection for the vulnerable isn't just good intentions, it's vigilance. I now keep a log of any unusual requests from tenants, verify IDs before letting anyone handle a neighbor's affairs, and encourage others to speak up when something feels off. The lesson stuck: trust but verify, and never let a charming smile blind you to the paper trail.